The version of Christian history that you have been carefully taught in your textbooks, in your universities, and from the prominent pulpits of the Western world is a meticulously crafted, politically motivated, and deeply sanitized European illusion. It is a fabricated, highly curated narrative designed by ancient institutional powers to completely pacify you, to control your understanding of spiritual authority, and to hide the terrifying, undeniable reality of where the true, unedited faith actually began. The mainstream Western Church has aggressively pushed a narrative that Christianity is fundamentally a Western religion. They desperately want you to believe that the absolute center of the spiritual universe is a city built on 7 hills in Italy, that the faith was civilized by sophisticated European philosophers, violently organized by powerful Roman emperors, and generously distributed by Western missionaries to the rest of the supposedly ignorant world. That is an absolute, demonstrable, and carefully protected historical lie. They took the raw, unedited, and incredibly powerful origins of the ancient faith, and they actively buried them under centuries of European tradition, colonial arrogance, and Roman censorship. They wanted a historical origin story that fit neatly into their newly formed imperial theology, an origin that would permanently cement the absolute authority of the European kings and bishops over the minds of the global population. But they completely failed to erase the original historical blueprint. Isolated in the treacherous, impassable highlands of the Horn of Africa, fiercely protected by massive mountain ranges and thousands of years of deafening silence, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church held on to the complete, unredacted, and absolute true history of the early believers. While the entire Western world was busy slicing up the scriptures, deliberately altering the historical timeline to suit the political agendas of Roman emperors and medieval popes, Ethiopia quietly preserved the absolute, unfiltered truth about who God actually chose first. This deleted knowledge reveals that the first major nation to officially receive, protect, and establish the unfiltered message of the Messiah was not the Roman Empire. It was the ancient, powerful, and deeply spiritual empire of Ethiopia. If you want to continue believing in the comforting, simplistic, and culturally acceptable cartoon version of a European-centric religion because it requires absolutely zero critical thinking and zero historical accountability, you absolutely need to click away from this video right now. Unsubscribe from this channel immediately, turn off your screen, and go back to the sanitized religious matrix if you prefer the safety of the manufactured lie. But if you have ever felt that the mainstream historical narrative is missing vital, logical puzzle pieces, and if you are finally ready to look directly at the suppressed, deleted history of the true first Christians, then keep listening closely. Because what the ancient Ethiopian archive actually reveals about the secret history of the faith shatters the foundational illusions of Western theology and changes the fundamental laws of everything you thought you knew about the ancient world. Before you can even begin to process the sheer weight of this deleted historical revelation, you have to fundamentally accept the absolute reality of the geographical and theological crime that was committed by Western historians. You have to understand what actually happened during the first century, long before the Roman Empire ever decided to stop murdering Christians and adopt the faith as a political weapon. To find the actual, literal beginning of the global expansion of the faith, you have to open the canonical book of Acts, specifically chapter 8. In this highly overlooked and deeply underpreached section of the biblical text, an angel of the Lord specifically redirects the apostle Philip away from the crowded cities of the Middle East and sends him into the barren desert. There, he does not meet a Roman centurion. He does not meet a Greek philosopher. He encounters a highly educated, immensely powerful African official, the chancellor of the exchequer, the chief treasurer of the Candace, the queen of the Ethiopians. This man is traveling in a royal chariot, and he is reading the ancient Hebrew scrolls of the prophet Isaiah. I want you to stop and seriously consider the absolute magnitude of that exact moment. Why was a powerful African government official traveling all the way to Jerusalem to worship? Why did he have personal possession of the incredibly rare, highly expensive ancient Hebrew scrolls? And why did the Spirit of God specifically orchestrate this exact intersection in the middle of the desert? It was not an accident. It was the activation of a cosmic plan that had been put into motion nearly 1,000 years earlier. When Philip explains the prophecy to the Ethiopian official, the man immediately believes. He is baptized in the desert water, and he takes the unedited, raw power of the gospel directly back to the continent of Africa. He bypasses Rome entirely. He bypasses the European continent completely. He takes the uncorrupted message straight into the impenetrable highlands of Ethiopia, planting the absolute first roots of a sovereign Christian nation while the Romans were still violently executing believers in the Colosseum. The Western Church desperately downplays this incredibly pivotal event because it proves, undeniably, that the African Church did not need European permission, Roman councils, or Western missionaries to access the Creator of the universe. The direct line of spiritual authority was established in Ethiopia centuries before a single pope ever sat on a throne in Italy. But to truly understand exactly why God specifically chose Ethiopia to be the primary geographical vault for the new faith, you have to look far past the New Testament. You have to look into the deep, ancient, and fiercely suppressed ancestry of the Ethiopian people. The mainstream Western narrative treats the Ethiopian conversion as a random, lucky event. But the ancient Ethiopian archive, specifically the national epic known as the Kebra Nagast, reveals a secret history that is so incredibly profound it makes the Western historical timeline look like an absolute joke. Ethiopia was not a blank, pagan slate waiting to be conquered by a new religion. Ethiopia was already the most ancient, fully prepared, and genetically connected spiritual outpost on the absolutely entire planet. Nearly 1,000 years before Jesus Christ was even born, the Queen of Sheba, the ruler of the Ethiopian Empire, traveled to Jerusalem to meet with King Solomon. This is a recorded biblical fact, but the deleted history, the history that the West absolutely refuses to legitimize, details exactly what happened next. The Queen of Sheba and King Solomon produced a son, Menelik I, who returned to Ethiopia carrying not just the royal genetic bloodline of the tribe of Judah, but the actual, physical presence of the God of Israel. The ancient archives boldly declare that Menelik brought the literal Ark of the Covenant, the most sacred, powerful, and terrifying artifact in human history, out of a corrupting Jerusalem and deep into the heavily fortified mountains of Aksum in Ethiopia. For over a millennium before the cross, the Ethiopians were already strictly observing the laws of Moses. They were keeping the Sabbath. They were circumcising their children. They were preserving the ancient Hebrew cosmology. They were a massive, thriving, technologically advanced nation of African Jews holding onto the ultimate relic of the ancient world. When God was looking for the perfect, uncorrupted, and fiercely protected geographical location to plant the ultimate truth of the Messiah, he did not choose the pagan, bloodthirsty, politically unstable empire of Rome. He chose the ancient, mountainous fortress that already held the Ark of the Covenant. He chose the people who already had the DNA of King David running through their royal veins. He chose Ethiopia because the ground had already been meticulously prepared for 1,000 years. And this undeniable, ancient infrastructure is exactly why the Ethiopian Church survived the massive, corrupting political takeover that eventually destroyed the purity of the Western Church. In the 4th century, the Roman Emperor Constantine realized that he could no longer defeat the Christian movement through violence, so he did something far more dangerous. He merged the church with the military and political power of the Roman Empire. Suddenly, the raw, anti-establishment faith of the early apostles was transformed into the official, state-sponsored religion of the most brutal empire on earth. The Roman bishops began calling massive political councils, such as the Council of Nicaea and the Council of Chalcedon. They sat in incredibly wealthy, decorated rooms, surrounded by armed Roman guards, and they began violently dictating exactly what the entire world was required to believe. They began editing the scriptures. They began deleting the ancient apocalyptic texts like the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees, because those texts explicitly condemned corrupt, earthly kings and wealthy religious hierarchies. They built an entire theological system designed to completely control the global population, forcing everyone to submit to the absolute authority of the Roman Pope and the European emperors. But when the Roman Empire arrogantly looked to the south and demanded that the ancient Ethiopian Empire submit to their newly manufactured, politically sanitized Western theology, the Ethiopians completely ignored them. Ethiopia did not need the Council of Chalcedon. They did not need the permission of a Roman emperor. They had received the faith directly from the apostles, and their spiritual roots went all the way back to the throne of King Solomon. They completely rejected the theological corruption of the West, choosing instead to close their borders, protect their massive ancient archives, and retreat into the impenetrable, dizzying heights of the African mountains. This absolute defiance is the exact reason why the Western institutions have spent the last 1,500 years desperately trying to erase Ethiopia from the theological map. An institutional, politically motivated religious empire that derives its immense wealth and political power from claiming to be the absolute, exclusive mother of the global church simply cannot allow the masses to know that an African nation predates their entire organization. If the general public understood that the Ethiopian church possessed a far older, far purer, and entirely unedited version of the ancient faith, the entire foundational myth of Western religious supremacy would instantly collapse. The elite European bishops desperately needed a sanitized, simplified narrative where they were the undisputed gatekeepers of absolute truth, holding the literal keys to heaven and controlling the exclusive interpretation of the Bible. The Ethiopian church, completely isolated, pure, and utterly untouched by the dark ages of European censorship, fiercely preserved the original, highly complex narrative. They maintained their incredible 81-book Bible, refusing to delete the terrifying, dimension-shattering prophecies of Enoch. They preserved the ancient, mystical understanding that God's justice is not an emotional, chaotic outburst controlled by human priests, but an incredibly patient, meticulously structured, and scientifically precise cosmic reality. The Western institutions intentionally created a massive historical blackout around Ethiopia precisely because an ancient, sovereign, uncorrupted African church completely removes the European claim to exclusive divine authority. They could not conquer Ethiopia militarily, so they decided to conquer them historically by simply writing them out of the textbooks. But the real, unfiltered, and intensely accurate true history of the early church that is graphically preserved in the Ethiopian archive is infinitely more terrifying and infinitely more glorious than the weak, culturally acceptable European version you were raised to tolerate. It describes a massive, invisible reality where the creator of the universe actively bypassed the arrogant, corrupt power structures of the West and deliberately planted his ultimate truth in the most geographically secure, historically prepared, and spiritually pure location on the planet. When you finally grasp the sheer magnitude of the Ethiopian secret history, you realize that the expansion of the New Testament faith was never meant to be a tool of European colonization. It was a highly aggressive, deeply profound cosmic invasion that started in the deserts of Africa and was protected by the mountains of Aksum. The original, terrifying historical blueprint has miraculously survived the fires of European censorship. The incredibly detailed, unedited archive, revealing the true African origins of the established faith, is freely available to absolutely anyone brave enough to actually look for it. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church never once stopped copying their ancient scrolls. They never stopped fiercely protecting the Ark of the Covenant. They never stopped believing in the raw, unfiltered, dimensionally profound reality of the Messiah. The ultimate question that this massive historical revelation forces you to answer today is not merely an academic exercise. It is a deeply personal, incredibly urgent ultimatum. Are you going to allow yourself to be continuously formed by the sanitized, comfortable, heavily edited historical lie that allows you to remain a placid, manageable consumer of modern, watered-down, westernized religion? Or are you finally ready to face the raw, unedited, terrifying reality that the true history of the faith was deliberately hidden from you to protect an institutional monopoly? The deleted histories are sitting right here in front of you. The ancient files have been cracked wide open, and the true identity of the first Christians has finally been revealed. There are so many more hidden archives, so many more mistranslated ancient texts, and so many more massive, institutional historical cover-ups that the elite powers are absolutely desperate to keep you from ever discovering. If you want to keep aggressively diving deeper into the forbidden histories that they violently suppressed, and if you are ready to completely deconstruct the historical lies you have been fed by the establishment, you need to hit that like button and subscribe to this channel right now. It costs you absolutely nothing to do it, but it mathematically tells the algorithm that you are awake, thinking critically, and completely ready for the absolute truth. The digital algorithms and mainstream religious institutions are constantly trying to bury this kind of disruptive, reality-altering historical information, but with your active help, the actual truth will never stay hidden in the dark. Stay subscribed to the channel, keep your eyes wide open, aggressively question every single historical narrative you have ever been taught by the Western system, and prepare your mind, because we are just barely scratching the surface of the massive historical archives they desperately tried to delete. We are just getting started.